Welcome to Timeless Insights, a channel dedicated to sharing the essence of books and applied psychology, helping you gain deeper understanding of yourself and live a meaningful life. If you are seeking guidance, motivation, and awakening in your journey, then this is the place for you. Have you ever asked yourself, what makes a life meaningful when time is running out? If one day you wake up and realize you're facing death, would you live any differently? In today's video, Timeless Insights invites you to step into the final pages of Paul's life, to listen, to feel, and to discover for yourself a new perspective on life, death, and love. Paul Kalanithi was not a professional writer. He was a neurosurgeon, a profession that demands sharp intellect, skillful hands, and a strong heart to touch the boundary between life and death every single day. But before becoming a doctor, Paul was a lover of literature. He studied English literature at Stanford with what seemed like a simple desire to understand what makes life meaningful. He was passionate about Camus, Shakespeare, Tolstoy, writers who didn't just tell stories, but delved into the essence of humanity. Yet when words were no longer enough to answer questions about life and death, Paul turned to medicine, a place where those very questions are asked every day, not on paper, but on the operating table. He believed science and philosophy are not mutually exclusive. On the contrary, they need each other to fully understand human beings. To him, becoming a doctor was not just about healing, but a way to go deeper into the fragility and nobility of human life. At the age of 36, just when his career path was opening up wide, Paul received devastating news. He had terminal lung cancer. From someone who used to help others cross the line between life and death, he became the one facing his own end. But instead of despairing, Paul chose to document this journey. He didn't write to complain, but to understand and to give something meaningful back to those who would remain. The book, When Breath Becomes Air, was born in the final months of his life. Every word was a remaining breath. Every page was a way of living more deeply, more mindfully, more courageously, even while knowing death was near. The reversal of roles, from doctor to patient. For Paul Kalanithi, death was something he once viewed through a microscope, through brain scans, through the eyes of patients' loved ones waiting for answers from a doctor. He was used to touching the line between life and death, but always from the role of an observer, the one guiding others through pain with calmness and expertise. He thought he understood death well enough to face it as part of the job. But then, after a persistent back pain and a vague fatigue, a series of test results pushed him into an entirely different reality: terminal lung cancer. In a moment, his role was completely reversed. The white coat now lay folded in a drawer, and he sat on a hospital bed as someone waiting for a doctor to read his results. No longer the one making decisions, he became the recipient of bad news. The medical terms that once felt familiar now carried the weight of fear and uncertainty. He understood his prognosis better than anyone, and that made everything feel even more real, even more chilling. From someone who believed in control and rationality, Paul was forced into a journey with no map. The question was no longer, how can I save others? But how should I live now that I know I'm going to die? This transformation wasn't just a physical or mental shock. It was a complete upheaval of his foundational understanding. It made him, for the first time, truly grasp the fragility, the passivity, the uncertainty that every patient endures. And yet, within that experience, Paul didn't lose himself. On the contrary, he began to live more truthfully and wrote a book in which every word was both a farewell and a wake-up call to those still alive. What is the meaning of life? When death is approaching, when the cancer diagnosis was confirmed, time suddenly took on a different measurement. No longer in years, months, plans, or goals, but in days, hours, seconds that remained. Each morning, Paul Kalanithi woke up knowing he was one step closer to the end, and the question echoing in his mind wasn't, why me, but how should I live now? In the quiet between chemo sessions and follow-up visits, Paul began reflecting on his life, not with regretful eyes, but with silent clarity. He realized, death does not take away life's meaning, it makes it more urgent. When time is no longer infinite, every action, no matter how small, carries weight. A hug, a conversation, a written line, a breath. He once touched the human brain, the seat of memory, identity, belief, and fear. Now, he faced the same question many had asked while sitting across from him. Does life still hold value when death is near? And Paul responded, not with words, but by the way he lived his final months. He chose to continue working when he still could, not to complete a career, but to fulfill his meaning. He chose to have a child with his wife, even knowing he might not live to watch that child grow. He didn't live to escape death, but because life was still worth living, even at its most fragile edge. For Paul, death wasn't the end of meaning. It was the ultimate test, that even when time cannot be extended, we can still deepen every moment we have. And sometimes it is this direct gaze into death that helps us live most truly. The author chose to write as a final way of living. As breaths grew shorter, fatigue crept into every morning, and his body slowly stopped obeying his will. Paul Kalanithi no longer placed hope in beating the illness. He didn't write this book to promote false optimism or to tell a miraculous story. No miracle happened. And yet, there was still something miraculous, the decision to write each final word with the life that was slipping away. Paul didn't write as a doctor, nor as a writer. He wrote as a human being, standing at the edge of life, looking back and selecting what was most important to give. There was no display, no drama, only deep sincerity, as someone facing death still wanted to leave behind a sliver of light for those who remained. The page was no longer a place to store ideas, but a testament of life. Every word a victory over paralysis, every paragraph a heartbeat, holding onto the last shred of meaning. With no time left to go further in his career, he left behind what could outlive him, a message, a spiritual legacy. When Breath Becomes Air is not a complete book, because Paul didn't have time to finish it. But it is this incompleteness that makes it more real. Like life itself, beautiful, profound, but never perfectly complete the way we imagine. And in the final section, when his wife Lucy, wrote the closing words for him, the reader doesn't just see an ending, but a love continuing to be written through someone else's life. Because death can end a life, but it cannot end the truth that has been lived and written. Death does not make life meaningless. It makes it more precious. Paul Kalanithi lived with death on his mind long before he got sick. As a neurosurgeon, he had often been the one to deliver news of death to patients and their families. But only when death came knocking on his own door, in the form of a stage 4 lung cancer diagnosis, did the true meaning of life become clearer than ever. We often think of death as an enemy, a full stop. Paul saw it differently. He viewed it as a mirror. In the face of death, all superficiality, social pressure, and vague ambitions suddenly faded. In the anxiety of struggling to breathe, he recognized the miracle of simply being alive, even for just one more day, one more sunny afternoon, one more conversation with someone he loved. Death makes us realize that time is finite, and because it's finite, every moment gains value. Paul no longer lived to build a career or achieve success in the conventional sense. He lived to be close to himself and those around him, to be a loving husband, a father even if only for a few brief months, a writer to leave behind something that would last longer than himself. To Paul, the meaning of life didn't lie in its length, but in its depth. The depth of each experience, of each emotion, of the awareness that he was alive and could lose it at any moment. He didn't need more time to do more things. He needed to be fully present in every moment that remained. And the miracle was, death, instead of stripping him of meaning, helped him find it. It taught him how to live, not with naive cheer, but with peace. Not with resignation, but with acceptance and gratitude. If I am to die, I want to die having lived, Paul wrote. That sentence may sound simple, but it carries the love and awareness of someone who had truly seen the burden and beauty of life. In our busy lives, we often forget that we will die, but death does not allow us to forget. It forces us to look back, to choose, to live consciously. There's no more time for hatred, for half measures, for days of mere existence without true living. Paul found that meaning, not after overcoming illness, but while living with it. Not in victory, but in a gentle and lucid surrender. He didn't fight death as an enemy, but lived with it as an honest companion, reminding him of what mattered most. In the final pages of When Breath Becomes Air, Paul devotes many lines to express his profound gratitude for the companionship and love of his beloved wife during his journey of facing death. Among them, there is one sentence that truly moved me. Paul wrote, "When you come to one of the many moments in life where you must give an account of yourself, provide a ledger of what you have been and done and meant to the world. Do not, I pray, discount that you filled a dying man's days with a sated joy, a joy unknown to me in all my prior years, a joy that does not hunger for more and more, but rests satisfied." Paul is sending a message to Lucy, telling her that it was her love and presence that brought him a complete joy, a profound joy he had never experienced throughout all his previous years. It was not just ordinary happiness, but a peaceful, fulfilling joy that no longer craved anything more, even in the face of death. This sentence clearly shows that for Paul, the meaning of life does not lie in achievements or in a long stretch of time, but in the quality of relationships and sincere emotions, in the moments spent with loved ones. This is also the grand message that Paul wanted to convey through his short life. Live meaningfully and fully in each moment with those we love. Sometimes it is precisely the moments close to death that make us live most clearly. And Paul, in his final days, lived just like that, with clarity, deep meaning, and overflowing gratitude. This is exactly what the book When Breath Becomes Air wants to say, that death is not the opposite of meaning, it is what completes it. A life not long, but deep. A life worth living because it is lived consciously. And the book is the most beautiful testament to that. Paul Kalanithi showed us that death is not the ultimate enemy to be avoided, but an inevitable part that helps us better understand the value of life. When we know that we could depart at any moment, we begin to see everything around us with more honesty and appreciation. Every breath, every moment with loved ones, every emotion and deep reflection becomes a brick that builds a meaningful life. The greatest message that Paul left behind is this: the meaning of life does not lie in its length, but in the depth and completeness of each moment we live. When facing death, we don't need more time. We need real presence. Presence in every second, in every breath, in every word and loving act. For it is love and gratitude that create complete joy, a joy that desires no more, but rests in serenity and contentment. When Breath Becomes Air is a gentle yet profound reminder to live consciously, to live without regrets, and to live so that when we must tell the story of our life, we can be proud that we truly lived, that we loved, gave, understood, and were understood. Paul's journey is a touching testament that although death is inevitable, the meaning of life can always be found, can always be created in every heartbeat, every glance, every word, and every small gesture of ours. And in that very awareness, we can learn to live more fully, more meaningfully, so that each day becomes a gift, each moment becomes a miracle. The above is the entire content of the book When Breath Becomes Air, an inspiring work about life, death, and the profound meaning of each moment we are still able to live. We hope that through this video, you have found for yourself some valuable reflections, helping you cherish each breath and every minute spent with your loved ones. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, leave a comment to share your thoughts, or send the video to someone who needs a little guidance during confusing times. Please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any upcoming content. Thank you for taking the time to listen. See you in the next videos, where every page of a book opens a door into the world within yourself. Wishing you soon find the meaning of your life.